Hello and welcome back to the 100 Jobs Project. I am your host, Katie Monson Gant, and today we are talking with a CEO and lead instructional designer for a contracting company that specializes in training and development, primarily with government clients and also some corporate clients. So excited to dive into that today. I know it's a lot of jargon, but Sarah is our guest and she will tell us what that means. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. This would not be a true DC based podcast if we didn't talk with someone who is in the government contracting realm within our first 10 episodes or so. So I'm really excited to chat with you today because you do some stuff that's really it's unique, it's specialized, and it also, I don't know, I knew nothing about government contracting when we moved out here, and now my husband is a government contractor and his stuff is a little different than what you're doing, but learning about the whole contracting world really opened up a lot for me, both in understanding how our government works and, what the heck this great big field even is. So I know you don't just do government work, you do some corporate work as well, work in the private sector, but really great experience. So welcome. I know I just talked a lot. Anything that you wanted to share about yourself, just as a quick little introduction?
I run Blake Learning Solutions with my husband. So we're a family-run business. We've been doing it for 13 years, I guess almost 14 now. And we are a training, development, and multimedia production company. And about half our work is federal contracting. We started as a federal government contractor, and we thought that would be what we would do. But over time, the way it actually played out is about half of our work is federal and half is corporate. And what we do is we create training, custom training and media products for any client for whatever they need in whatever format they need. So my background is in instructional design and learning. And my husband Casey's background is in video production and technology. And so together we can make whatever they need, a video, an e-learning course, a manual, a virtual reality training, whatever. And what we love doing is solving problems for clients, figuring out, analyzing their problem and proposing solutions and then developing them. Keeps it interesting and fun.
It definitely does. And, we've talked a bit in the past. I know that, your job has actually taken you all over the world, which is pretty unique, probably for instructional designers. But before we get into all of that and do a deeper dive, I would love to just get to know you a little more. We always do a few quick questions if you're up for it. First, I know that you are a Diet Coke connoisseur.
Yes.
Do you prefer can? Do you prefer bottle? Fountain drink?
Oh, straight from the fountain at the 7-Eleven down the street from my house. I never drank soda until I married Casey, actually. And I used to make fun of people who were like, the Diet Coke at this McDonald's is the best one. You can only get it from there. I was like, whatever, it's all the same. But no, it's different. And our 7-Eleven at Kings Highway and Telegraph Road is the best.
Do they have pebble ice or like just the chunky ice?
They just have regular ice, but I don't mind that.
If it's good Diet Coke, then the ice doesn't matter.
Well, and I think the bigger ice actually makes it last longer without getting watered down. The pebble ice is smaller and it melts faster. So if you want it to last all day.
Yeah, then you get the big one, get the bigger ice. And I'm glad that they're able to get that bubble ratio just right. Yeah, that is key.
Because sometimes they run out of syrup and we go hit the other 7-Elevens around here. Nobody has it quite right.
Okay. Well, good to know. Thank you.
Insight into my soul.
Just a few other things. Do you prefer working with like a music or a podcast on, or are you a work in silence kind of person?
I can't work with like a podcast or a movie on unless I'm doing just kind of mindless formatting kind of work. But I do like music, and I like kind of weird electronica or like classical electronic mixes of classical is my focus music. The Tron soundtrack is a favorite.
Yeah, I've seen Tron. Okay. Had to think back.
It's by Daft Punk, and it's all.
I have a hard time listening to music with lyrics while I'm working and trying to focus on something. But if it's just, boom, boom, boom.
It's just repetitive sounds. That helps me. Mm-hmm.
This brings us to our next question, our signature question, if you will. I love asking people what is in your work bag or what's at your workspace if you're working from home. So, 3 or 4 things that you're keeping at your desk or throwing in your work bag.
I have, this is all set up with all my favorite stuff. I have a water bottle. I have a random collection of fancy old stuff that I've gotten at different places that I have no use for, but like this bedazzled sewing machine that my mother-in-law gave me, some old costume jewelry, also from my mother-in-law who recently passed, but it's pretty. I'm never going to wear these giant rings, but I have them here. And this like crazy fancy thrift store set of silver-plated salt and pepper shakers.
Beautiful.
But I use those like all the time when I'm eating at my desk. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really like a knick-knack display person at any other part of the house, but I do put little shiny things here.
I love it. You're just a little working raven, bringing all your trinkets to your desk. No, that's fun. I think especially when you're working from home a lot, you need to have something in your space that helps you feel at home. So water bottle, Diet Coke, and a few bright, shiny objects. I love it.
Yeah, and like chapstick and gum.
Chapstick. Do you have a chapstick of choice?
Carmex in the tub. And then also chargers for my phone and my headphones.
Okay, fabulous. Well, thank you. I feel like that gives us a good little glimpse into who you are and what keeps you going. So let's talk about work now, if that sounds all right. Most people don't start out when they are young with the dream of doing whatever it is that they grow up. I would love to hear a little bit about growing up. What were you interested in? What was your family like? What did you think that you would do?
My dad was a postal worker, worked for the Postal Service and in like mail transportation and planning. And my mom was a school teacher, a really gifted one. And I grew up in a Mormon household. We're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I realized every woman in my family was married by the age of 21. And so I kind of just assumed I would grow up and get married and be a mom, be a stay-at-home mom probably. I definitely saw in my own parents' life careers take twists and turns. My dad was doing a PhD in German literature and in ROTC to pay for school and got called for active duty during the Vietnam War and sent to Berlin for 3 years. This was all before I was born. But when he came back, the market for like academic jobs had crashed, and he realized it was pointless to finish the PhD. He was never going to get a tenured position, and he could enter with his like military rank. He could enter the Postal Service at a high level of management, and he did that. And he worked for the Postal Service the rest of his life. I think that really shaped my practical approach to jobs. Seeing, first of all, on one hand, when I was young and idealistic as a child, you think, oh, he gave up his dream, his passion of German literature. But the older I got, I was like, that was a solid job. And he like provided for our family. He was home, like he was done at the end of the day and home for soccer games and practices. And anyway, the older I get, the more I appreciate my dad's choice and how he got there. And that I think he was probably equally satisfied with that path as he could have been in what, he thought was the dream or passion. My mom on-ramped and off-ramped a few times while she had little kids at home. But she always was doing something. She had a craft business. She did a daycare in the home. I definitely saw like a lot of creativity and entrepreneurship. I didn't see it that way when I was little, but as I look at it now, I'm like, oh, my mom was like a doer and a creator of things and opportunities. Then after the youngest was in like third grade, she went back to school full time. Yeah, so that's my family. In high school, I discovered I was a really good writer. I always got a lot of attention for my writing in English classes and stuff. I was like the star of the English department in high school, and I was the editor of the yearbook. I got a scholarship to this small junior college in Idaho, Riggs College. Now it's BYU Idaho. And I wanted to work on the yearbook there too. So I kept calling the number that was listed for the yearbook office. And every time it would ring, and then it would redirect me to this newspaper office. And I would say, oh, I'm trying to reach the yearbook office. I want to apply to work on the yearbook. This was when I was still in high school before I went to college the first year. And the guy I talked to would be like, oh, sure, let me redirect you. He directs my call. It rings and rings, and it comes right back to him. So after a couple times of this, that guy goes, listen, yearbook is really dumb. Newspaper is so much more fun. You should just apply for the newspaper. Give me your address. I'm going to send you an application. And that guy, his name was Jack Labat. Like, we're still friends. He sent me an application, and I filled out the application. I sent it back, and I got back a thing that was like, you're an associate editor of the college newspaper, and it's a full tuition pay.
Wow.
Yeah. So that blew my mind. And I was like, wow, I guess I got a job and I'm a newspaper person now. So I went off to college. I did English and journalism. I loved working on the newspaper staff. We produced a weekly paper, and it was like at least 20 hours a week of work. And we, wrote, edited, paginated, designed a full newspaper, like 50, 60 pages every week. I learned so much from that practical experience. And I was managing people immediately when I was 18, So I did a bunch of different editor positions there. And then I transferred to BYU Provo, where I worked on the newspaper there too. And by my senior year, I was the managing editor. So I was managing like 100 people in the newsroom and a ton of responsibility. And that was a daily newspaper. So every day we started with the editorial meeting. We made assignments. Articles were coming in by 3. I was editing, making calls about what goes on the front page. And then we produced for a radio news broadcast and a TV news broadcast. So it was a fully integrated newsroom. It was an amazing experience. And honestly, I learned far more from that than any of my classes. Yeah. I had great professors supporting it, and they had just set up a really amazing laboratory experience, right? I did that. I loved it. That was like my friends and my family were all there. But I also discovered I can be pretty intense about work. I like to think I'm not a workaholic, but I have a hyperactive sense of responsibility and excellence. And if there's something that needs to be done and done right, it's very hard for me to rest until it is. By the time I was done with college, I was like, I think journalism might eat me alive. Like, I think I might never be done. Like, there's always more you could report, always more you could, and I could always labor lovingly over every word I wrote. And I was like, I actually don't know if this is the right fit for me. I took a year and a half off and I went on a mission for my church to Japan, which was amazing. I came back. I lived in Colorado, where I grew up for a while, and just worked in a local small business. Then I moved to Utah to just strike out on my own. I worked as a legal secretary for 6 months as a temp job until I got something. In the same week, I got 2 job offers after 6 months of applying for everything. One was to be a copy editor for the Salt Lake City Weekly, and one which was a crazy tabloid, which has ads for sex workers in the back. It's a pretty crazy newspaper. And then the other one was to be the PR director for a humanitarian aid organization, which I was way more into. Yeah. But the City Weekly job came in the day before, and I accepted it, not expecting to get anything else. Mm-hmm. And then this other one for a humanitarian aid place came in. And I remember I was at the law office where I was working, and I was telling everybody knew I didn't want to stay and be a legal secretary forever. So I'm talking to this lawyer, and I was like, she's like, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, I mean, I gave my word, so I guess I'm going to work at City Weekly. And she was like, what? She was like, which job do you want? And I was like, well, the humanitarian aid. And she's like, then that's the job you take. And I was like, but I told them I accepted. They're planning on me. They probably turned somebody else down. And she's like, listen, if you started and they decided they didn't like you or couldn't support the position, they would fire you that day and they wouldn't even think about it. The only person you're beholden to here is you and your career path and what you want to do. And that's a decision you should make. And I'm so grateful somebody told me that young, because I would totally have taken a job I didn't want and worked in it for a year because of honor, because of the sense of doing the right thing. Yeah, I needed somebody to say it's okay to make your own choice for yourself, because no one else is looking out for you in your career. It's nobody else's job. That's your job. So I worked at that humanitarian aid place for 5 years. It was like most nonprofits. It was small. It was a one-woman shop. I did marketing, PR, and volunteer management. I launched their website. I made all their brochures and materials. So I learned a lot of skills. It was also cool because I'd only done PR stuff from the journalism side, receiving press releases, but now I was writing them and sending them out. And while I was there, there was a lot of big humanitarian news. There was Hurricane Katrina and the tsunami in Southeast Asia, and our organization was very involved in sending supplies out to those places. And so there were months where I was on the news being interviewed about humanitarian aid stuff on the local TV news, multiple times a month. So I was on camera. It was fun and exciting, but it was very bad pay. And I also was there for 5 years, and I started to realize I felt like I was a little bit living my plan B. Again, I always thought I would be married and have babies and stay home and be a stay-at-home mom. And maybe I'd be writing on the side or something. But I really had not like articulated a vision for my life. And so I was just going with the flow of what opportunities came to me. But after 5 years in the same place, I was like, how long do I want to do this? Is this even what I want? Or is this just what was available? And I applied for a master's of public administration at the University of Utah, and I got in. And it was an executive program, so it was going to take 3 years of night classes. Like the night before I was supposed to sign to pay tuition and start, I declined and backed out because I was like, I don't actually want to stay here for 3 more years. And I don't want to stay here and have no social life and just be working at the same job where I'm not growing or being seen as the person I've developed into, but just as the person they originally hired and like taking classes every night. So I was like, what do I want to do? I don't want to do that. I don't want to stay here.
What a scary thing. I just have to add, literally the night before, you've already kind of like, you're going down this path, you applied, you've been imagining your life doing this, and then to just be like, nope. Okay, this is not what I want. And you're committed at that point to like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore.
I had to push it right up to the wire to like definitively know that I didn't want it. This is my thing, obviously. Sometimes I have a hard time knowing what I want because I enjoy solving problems. I enjoy being needed and being responsible and responsive. And there's lots of opportunities for a person like that, but you have to like take ownership of directing the opportunities you want. And that was the lesson I had to learn in my 20s. So anyway, I took a few months of like really soul searching and like actively thinking and writing and figuring out what I wanted. And I realized I had always wanted to join the Peace Corps or something. I wanted to live abroad. I wanted to like scratch the itch of going all in on humanitarian work. And I also was increasingly feeling like I maybe wanted to work in education. In my job, I managed a lot of volunteers of all ages, but a lot of youth groups and kid groups. And I was like, I love interacting with them. Maybe I want to be a teacher, but it's really hard to change careers midstream. I was like, I don't want to like go back and get a license only to find I don't like it. So what I came up with was to do all of the things I wanted. Through the place I worked, we had a large network of other charities around the world that we donated supplies to. And there's one called Rising Star Outreach in southern India that I really admired. And I reached out to them and I was like, what if I came and worked for you for a year for free? And they were like, awesome, we'll take it. And so I was like, okay, so that's what I'm doing. And I told my company, my organization that I was leaving. This was a total surprise. So I took this leap of faith. I had like $8,000 saved after years of working. It was a school for leprosy patients, children from leprosy colonies. It was a boarding school because if they stayed with their parents on the leprosy colonies, they were usually forced into begging. So it was to give them other opportunities and teach them English, which would give them more opportunities down the line. So I would live at the school. I would eat with the kids. So I was like, okay, I can stretch my money. But it was such a leap of faith. When the word spread through the organization that I was leaving, the founder of the organization came into my office one day and he was like, I heard you're leaving. I'm really sad about that. And I was like, I know, Kelly, but I have to, like, I can't stay here forever. I have to grow up and I need to do this. And he was like, I thought you'd say that. So here you go. And he gave me a check for $25,000. And I was like, what? He was like, I went and looked at what you've been paid. And it was so far below what you should have been paid for the level of work that you do. So consider this a correction and like a boost to help you. You're trying to do a good thing. Yeah. It blew my mind. Like it was in Indiana Jones where he has to take the leap of faith and like start walking across the chasm. Yeah. I was literally about to step and then this $25,000 check appeared. And I like closed down my life and I moved to India. And in the couple of weeks while I was doing that, the school had a bunch of challenges come up and they'd had to fire the principal of the school. And so when I got there, I was expecting to be like an assistant director or just like jack of all trades, just help with whatever, right? But when I got there, they were like, actually, do you want to be the principal of the school? Because we don't have a principal now. And so I was 29. I had no education experience, young American girl, and I was suddenly the principal of the school. We had 150 kids, super rural Tamil Nadu, about 2 hours outside of Chennai, it's a big city. They had an American university professor of education who was going to come in 6 months and take over the school. But until he could get there, I was holding down the fort and he could coach me from afar.
And did you have like good internet or phone connections at this point?
There was one landline at the school. And they were like, oh, if you want a cell phone, you got to buy it yourself. The phone only worked in random places. Like if I wanted to call my family, I had to stand on the roof of the school. And sometimes I had to stand on a ladder on the roof of the school to get enough signal.
No, you were not like able to just Google, hey, how do I be a principal for this school? You were.
Oh, no, I could not do that for sure. They always had like a rotation of volunteers coming. And there was this one guy who had been like I think a school district superintendent in Canada. Anyway, he was like, oh, honey, you have bit off a lot here. And he coached me so much. And one of the things he taught me was about learning objectives. And he was like, if you want to like make this school more effective, you have to define what you're trying to teach, and you have to write it as a verb statement with like, the kids will be able to do this thing under these conditions to this standard. That was my first introduction to instructional design. And it was definitely like in the trenches. How do I translate this school, like these concepts into actual learning for these kids?
Definitely a little different than, that newspaper job you could have taken.
Anyway, the thing I learned from all that is that I did love designing learning. I didn't actually want to be in the classroom. That wasn't my favorite. And the more creative the learning experience could be, the more I liked it. So I was like, I think what I want to do is I want to work at Sesame Street, was what I came up with at the end of this. So after 6 months, when the professor came, I transitioned him and I was like, I'm actually going to leave early. I had started dating someone right before I left for India, and we'd been emailing long distance, and he was in Washington, D.C. And I was like, I need to go see if this could happen. I know I don't want to go back to Salt Lake. So I moved to D.C. We broke up just a couple weeks later. It was really obvious we just weren't the right fit, but I needed to go somewhere. Yeah. So there it was. So a couple weeks later, I'm in Washington, D.C., without a job, without a boyfriend, with like totally had intestinal parasites from India. It was rough. No insurance either. It was a rough time. And I applied for temp jobs, and I got this temp assignment for 1 week to be a receptionist at a federal contractor. So here we are to the federal contractor part. I did that job, and at the end of the week, I left my resume with the HR person on Friday night, and I went to New York City to visit a friend. And that Sunday afternoon, I got a call from the vice president of the company, and he was like, hey, somebody gave me your resume, and you're a writer, and we actually have a position we've been trying to fill. I want to offer you a job. And I was like, whoa, okay, like awesome. And he was like, what do you need salary wise? And I was like, I've been working for free in India. I had no idea, right? So I was like, I don't think I could live on less than 40,000. I didn't even know that was okay to say, right? And he like just laughed out loud at me, and he goes, we'll start you at 55. And I was like, mind blown, right? So I had a job as a curriculum developer for a federal contractor, making way more money than I'd ever made before. The company had won a contract to develop a training for family members of wounded warriors to help them navigate the healthcare system, the military medical health system. And so I had to work with a committee of people from representing all these different disciplines. And then we made it into a journal called Keeping It All Together. That was like a bunch of instructions and then a bunch of like kind of therapeutic supporting you through this thing. And so I wrote that, I designed it, I did the graphic design, we got published. I had to work in the Pentagon a lot. I had this one crazy stressful day where I had to, the Secretary of Defense was doing a broadcast, and he was going to hold up the prototype of the book and be like, we're so pleased to announce we have this. I slept through my alarm, and I almost didn't get it. I had to go pick it up at the print shop, and I like barely made it.
What a day to sleep through your alarm. Oh.
Well, so the next big thing that happened to me was I got set up on a blind date with a guy from California. It was through a mutual friend who didn't know either of us. He knew. Anyway, he was like, do you want to go on this date? The date is, he's like, I don't know the guy, but I know his brother. His brother's great. The date is to tour the West Wing of the White House. And I was like, yes, I'll go with anybody to tour the West Wing. That's a really hard tour to get. So I went on a date with this guy from California, Casey, and we hit it off. And he was 33. I was 30. We both had dated enough to know the good one when we met one, right? Now, I had literally just moved across the world for a guy only to break up with him. So I was like, I cannot just like put all my eggs in this LA guy basket. I cannot just like move willy-nilly for every guy I start dating. So I'm having a plan B. I'm applying to grad school, to the best grad schools I can in education stuff, because I want to work for Sesame Street. So I applied to a bunch of schools, and I got into Harvard, to the Master's of Education program at Harvard. And this was right around the time that Casey and I were like pretty sure we're going to get married. And I was like Harvard Schmarvard, we should just get married. And Casey was like, no way, you have to do this. You would always regret it. It's only a 1-year program. So I moved to LA for the summer, and through Casey's connections in Hollywood, he got me an internship at the Jim Henson Company. So I interned there. I worked on the shows Sid the Science Kid and Dinosaur Train, and learned a lot about Hollywood and stuff. That was really fun. And we got engaged. The other thing we did, we bought a foreclosed duplex that summer I was there and started fixing it up. And it was the bottom of the market, the global financial crisis. So we're doing that. I moved back to Boston and started my master's at Harvard, and we got married in the middle of that year. We're flying back and forth the whole time, just like we had been when I was in DC. And when I finished, I moved to LA, and we lived there for a couple more years. And then Casey got laid off. Again, the global financial crisis eventually hit Hollywood, and like everybody in technology at his level and up got fired, and it was impossible to find a job. Right? The CTOs, the chief technology officers, had been laid off, so he, at the director level, was not going to. They were like applying for his level jobs, and nothing was going to happen. I, meanwhile, had been working at this tutoring company that they were trying to contract to provide tutoring to students in LA Unified School District. They randomly won. They were thinking they'd have like 1,000 students, and instead they were awarded 30,000 students. And to tutor that many, they had to hire like 8,000 tutors and get them trained and ramped up and running in like 3 months. And I was like, have you guys seen those courses you take online, like on the computer? It like plays, it's like a video, but you have to play and it quizzes you and stuff. I was like, that's what you should be doing. Everyone can do it at home. And they were like, awesome. Will you build one? And I was like, yes. So they gave me a budget of $5,000, and I like found a guy who could teach me what software I needed. And anyway, I learned how to do this it was my first e-learning course. Anyway, I was working for them. I had some serious ethical problems with some of the choices the leadership was making in that company, and I wanted to get out of there as fast as I could. But Casey got laid off, and I had the only job. And at this time of kind of desperation, my old company in DC called, and they were like, we just want a contract with the Army. We need an instructional designer to lead this team. I think you can do it remotely from California. Maybe we have to come out to DC once a month. And I was like, I'm in, right? I'm so happy to leave. So pretty quickly, the Army kind of did a bait and switch and was like, actually, she needs to be here 3 out of 4 weeks a month. So to have to move to DC away from Casey, he couldn't just up and leave. We had a half redone house too. It felt quite devastating, but we had to do it. I had just burned a bridge with this other company, right? And so I take this, I'm off to DC all the time. The company felt so bad about it that they invited Casey they were like, there's a part of this contract to produce videos for the Army sexual harassment assault prevention training. And do you want to submit a proposal? So Casey and I made this proposal together. We got one of my Harvard professors to be like one of the advisors. We put together a killer team of including 2 friends who were like just up and coming screenwriters who were just getting started at the time, who are now the creators of the Rings of Power series. We gave them their first paid writing gig. So that was the start of our business. Like we put together the proposal without even having the business formed. Yeah. And so that was the start of our business. We called it Peak Media Group then. And we were off and running. And so Casey still had to stay in LA for a while and finish the house so we could rent out both sides of it. Now, I really felt a lot of loyalty to the company that had given us this opportunity. Yeah. In that time, I had to hire and run a team of like 40 people to do this big instructional design project. And I learned a ton from that. Especially, I learned that people's credentials do not equal their value on a team. So anyway, we were like, I think we can do this for ourselves. I think we can have our own company. I think we can hire smart young people with the right orientation to learning and not worry about the credentials so much, and let's do it. So at the same time, we also sold our house in LA, and it had doubled in value. We bought it at the bottom of the market. We sold at the peak, which meant we paid off our student loans, we paid off our cars. We had this like nest egg to fund our business for a bit. So I quit. We did this. For like 9 months, we won one $19,000 contract, and that was it. And then as part of the sale of that house, we had to put that money into a down payment on a new house, but we couldn't qualify for a loan unless we both had jobs. Mm-hmm. So we both had to go get other jobs so we could qualify for a loan. And so we just did the business on the side, which was mostly we were just writing proposals at night to try to win government work. About another year or a year and a half after that, we won our first big contract, which was with the Navy. It was running a training team to support 600 contractor personnel at Navy bases all around the world with all the training that they needed. And that was enough that we could quit our other jobs and hire 2 employees. And so the employees started coming to our basement. I'm in our basement right now. When we moved in, it was unfinished. And when our first employees started coming, it was still unfinished. It was just like beams and rafters. 2020 was super hard. Everybody paused their contracts, and we had recently staffed up. It was a stressful year. We took all kinds of crappy projects just to like keep the lights on. And by that time, we had 4 little kids at home. So we couldn't have, nobody wanted to do childcare in COVID, right? So we were taking care of the kids, working by night. It was, that was rough.
Yeah.
Everyone went home in the pandemic, and we figured out that it works totally fine to be remote. And then everybody has moved all over the country, and our team is everywhere now, and we all work remote, and I love it.
Now, ground me just a little bit. How many years has it been now since you first won that initial contract and started the company?
It will be 14 years in February.
Okay, that's a lot to have happened in 14 years. And I know that you've ventured outside of just federal contracts as well. You've done some work in the private sector. What sort of work do you do in the private sector? Is it mostly consulting, or is it also instructional design?
It's the same kind of thing. It's instructional design. The thing that I didn't know, that everyone who maybe wants to go into business for themselves needs to know, is that whatever it is you think you like doing, making pottery, making jewelry, doing instructional design, what you have to really like doing is selling that thing. Like you have to like or figure out how at least to market. So we've been fortunate that we do really good work, and we have a really strong relationship of trust with our clients, and we've mostly grown through word of mouth. We do write proposals, but we've found like all of our major clients, it started with one contact. We did a small thing for them. We did a great job, and then they came back for more and bigger things. We've expanded. Like I would say, when we started, our bread and butter was creating e-learning courses, where you have to do like the onboarding training or sexual harassment prevention or whatever management training. We make those courses. We've done a lot of video for government clients, like we ended up doing a lot of work for the Office for Bombing Prevention. So all of their videos about how to recognize when someone is acquiring explosive material and building bombs in their garage, that's us. Then we've expanded into translating. We've translated millions of words, like whole training libraries of content. It's actually a really complex thing. We use AI tools, but it's really manual still. And we manage learning management systems, like the platform on which people take training. Okay. It's all kinds of stuff. And then we also have people delivering training, some live, like super senior facilitators training executives. And then we do we did hundreds of sessions this last year for a company of personal career development coaching for their employees. So all kinds of stuff. What's fun about this field is it's always a new challenge and a new problem, and a new industry. And I like that variety a lot.
I am curious, what does a typical work day look like for you? What is happening from the time you wake up until you are going to bed at night?
Everything about my schedule is balancing the family's needs. And I also said earlier, I probably a little bit in the workaholic territory, although it's not that I love it. It's just that I can't rest if I haven't done a good job or I feel like someone needs me. So, at different times, I've definitely had weird boundaries with work. My last 2 babies, I had meetings in the hospital room, like the day of a C-section. With our employees came to see the baby. It was they're like my sisters. Yeah. I wanted them there, but also we were talking about this giant thing that was due in 2 days. And I'm often working late at night so that I work a shorter day to be with the kids more. And then I have to work at night. So right now, our oldest is in middle school. She gets on the bus at 6:45. I get up and I get her off. Our other kids don't leave for school until 2 hours later. So I come down and I get a lot of work done, and I can usually answer emails, get set the day. I'm actually really enjoying that. I haven't done a morning focus session before this season of life, but I'm really liking that. And then we get the other kids off, and by 9, I'm back at my desk, and I work until 4 or so when the kids get home from school.
And are you picking them up, or are they taking the bus home?
They take the bus, and they come to the bottom of our street. So we usually go meet them.
It sounds like you're probably taking a little bit of time for some family time and then maybe occasionally,
Then,
working again later in the evening.
yeah, the kids are supposed to be in bed by 9, and we often come down and work a bit. With waking up earlier with Annie, I can't stay up as late, which is a good thing.
Now, I am curious, you've been in business with your husband now for 14 years. Some people absolutely cannot work with their partner. You obviously can, and you guys are a great team. But is there anything that you've learned from that, or any boundaries or different things that you've needed to set in your relationship to help make both work and family life compatible?
To be honest, it's just pretty easy for us. We are really lucky that we're really aligned on this. We both like to work hard and do a good job.
Good.
And I will say that Casey works in a silo a lot more than I do. We've ended up hiring mostly women. It feels like the Sarah show a lot. And this is the thing we're trying to evolve. It's just, things happen how they happen. Casey is amazing at finance. He's amazing at IT. Like, he has built our own servers. He builds our computers and ships them to our employees. He can do all of this stuff that we could not possibly pay someone to do as well. Not like, it saves us tons of money, and it enables us. We totally believe in giving our team really good computer systems and like multiple monitors, like invest in their productivity. And anyway, Casey enables all of that stuff, all of the infrastructure, but it's a little bit less sexy and it's a little bit less social for him. He's like, and not that the team treats him like this, but it's like a utility that you take for granted. So sometimes, like, his interactions in a day will just be like, Casey, my Teams won't sync, and he's just troubleshooting crap like that. So it's not as rewarding personally, and in the business, it's been a tough year. Strangely, Doge and like the government cuts didn't affect any of our contracts until almost the end of the year, when we were awarded a huge new contract, and then it got paused.
The government shutdown really, really affects people in DC. I didn't realize it until we moved out here, but it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal. But the general economic uncertainty actually made our corporate clients pull back. And everybody, when they're uncertain, people just freeze. Last year, we had so much work, like, contracted, that we had hired up to. We had 13 full-time employees, more than we've ever had. And then we had 50 employees total. We've always kept a big network of part-time freelancers because training often comes in waves, and we needed to stay responsive to that. So we had this huge payroll, and then all the work started going, and it's just been a super stressful year. At the same time, Casey's mom, who we moved her from California here 2 years ago and to her own apartment. She started this year. She was in the hospital with heart problems. And then in the spring, we moved her in with us. So then we're caring for his senior mother as she fades. And then she passed away at the beginning of September. It was a rough time. And she's my mother-in-law, but I still really loved her. And it definitely just makes you rethink. It just shatters your assumptions about how you are spending your time and what matters in life.
Yeah.
Right. And we just both came through that being like, why are we working so hard all the time? I just want to be with our kids and with our family. I want to have more fun. Yeah. I want to, his mom lived a really big, happy life. And she inspired us to be like, what are we doing? We have a great life, but also we're figuring stuff out, what we want the next iteration of the business to look like.
Unfortunately, sometimes I don't want to say it does take really big life things to kind of shake us up, but, for better or for worse, big things happen. You have to navigate those changes, and it does, or it can, depending on how you work through it, give you perspective for what do you want things to look like moving forward. And I also think when something like that happens, I don't know, it can just feel like everything is closing in. Even when, at the end of the day, you still have this incredible family, you still have this wonderful business with a lot of people that you are able to provide stability for. I don't know, sometimes it's just winter and spring is just around the corner. You just got to get there to get through it, and, maybe get an SAD light in the process.
Yeah, I think we're starting to come through it. We actually have been working with a business strategy consultant who we're trying to develop a partnership with. We're going to develop a collaboration with him, but he offered to do a strategy session with us, and it was So good. So good to talk through and think through and like write about and like figure out what we really want. Because this is the same thing I learned in my 20s, right? If you don't figure out what you want, and if you are not actively choosing the thing that you want, then other opportunities will use you up. Will just like you'll be responding to things, that whatever's in front of you, and it's all good stuff. We're not doing anything bad. We're doing lots of good things, but it's not, I'm not sure it's what we want to be doing. And you just get there naturally. It's a lot of work to figure out, to articulate to yourself what you really want. And it's scary sometimes, right?
Well, I mean, from where I'm standing, it seems like you're doing a great job. And that's a great time, too, to bring in a business coach or someone who's, an outside influence when you're going through a lot of changes. Is okay, maybe let's get someone else's perspective on this, too, and help us work through this. So thank you for sharing that. I do have maybe 2 more questions for you. Hopefully, not too terrible. I would love to know what you do to unwind.
I'm pretty bad at that. This whole time I've been like, I tell myself this, I get to live 2 dreams that I had. I actually, when I get doing instructional design stuff, I love my work and I love our team. So I'm having a career that I love, and that is a gift that not everybody gets. And I get to have this beautiful family of 4 kids that in my 20s, I honestly didn't know if I was going to get married and get to have kids. It was my dearest dream of my heart. So I get to do those 2 things. And I kind of think at this season of my life, that is all I get to do. And maybe I get to sleep, but that's it.
Fabulous. Well, thank you again for chatting. I would love to know, if there's anyone who's considering either starting their own business, going into instructional design, or even like nonprofit work. I know that covers a lot of areas, but just anything that you would tell someone either starting out or looking to make a pivot.
Okay, on the making a pivot, if you do not want to be doing the thing that you are doing, then you must change, because it is your life and you're the only person in charge of it, and no one else is going to do it for you. But it is super hard, and the older you are and the further you've gone down a path, the harder it is to change. So I just stumbled into my thing of like doing something crazy, like moving to India to work for free at a school for leprosy colony kids. But it's actually really good advice. Do something wild and crazy, like do something outrageous to make that shift, because it's an amazing story you can tell, and it helps you explain the transition. Like I got into Harvard because of that crazy story, right? And I got the internship at Jim Henson Company because of that crazy story. And all of these things have added up to a lot more opportunities. Like, first of all, try something with the lowest stakes possible before you like burn your life down and move into something else. But if you're pretty sure, then take a wild and crazy leap. Nonprofits. By the end of my time in nonprofits, I was pretty jaded. I personally think there's a lot of heart. There's not always effective management. And it's often pretty entrenched and hard to work on. There's often like a personality who started a place, and you have to work with their quirks. And I don't know, my time in India left me actually a convert to how capitalism can change the world and improve people's lives. I came home a lot more like fiscally conservative than I expected to be, and I'm a believer in creating jobs now, right? I don't know, it's been a weird year in federal contracting. It used to feel like a really stable path. It doesn't feel like that anymore. And while it's been super disruptive, I'm not sure that's a bad thing overall for the federal government. We've also seen some crazy amount of waste and incompetence in our federal clients. And we enjoy, like, part of the reason we keep doing more corporate work is because we enjoy the like rigor of like the profit motive and their like tighter timelines and high expectations. It's kind of exciting and fun.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today, for sharing your wisdom. I think that is unique advice that I am hopeful that people will take. So thank you again. And that wraps us up for today. We will see you next week on Wednesday. You can find us at 100jobsproject.com, on Instagram at 100jobsproject for a little bit of behind the scenes content. And if you appreciate the show or want to support it, please share it with a friend or give us a rating or a review. This is a new show, so that's the best thing that you can do to support it. Thank you again. We'll see you next week. Bye.